Looks like Johnny's liking that cup of coffee.
I'm trying to be quiet because last week I jumped in the middle of the prayer, and I think that's not a wise thing to do for some reason. There's no rule against that, but I'm hoping I did enough penance over the week for that miscue.
All right, we're recording live. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Eastern Shore Delegation meeting. Today is January 19th, 2024. I'm calling the meeting to order. If we could please rise for the saying of the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So, Senator Mounts, good morning to you. And hopefully Mary Beth jumps on about halfway through your prayer, but if you could please offer prayer.
Well, thank you, Chairman and colleagues. It's great to be with you this morning. Let's bow our heads in a posture of prayer. Dear Lord, we want to thank you for every day that you give us. We want to thank you for every opportunity that you give us. We want to praise you for all the strength, the mercy, the forgiveness, and the friendship and camaraderie that we have through our roles in government and through our roles in life. We ask that you continue to and strengthen us and guide us as we move forward together to do the best that we can for the Eastern Shore and for the state of Maryland. With that, everybody, we say amen and God bless.
Amen. So this morning we have the approval of January 12th meeting minutes. Could I get a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye. All those opposed? Okay. So good morning, everyone. We're going to start today with the Maryland Department of Human Services, Secretary Rafael Lopez. Secretary Lopez, are you there? I'm not seeing or hearing Secretary Lopez right now.
This is Heather Zanoni. Oh, there you go, Rachel. Where do you have eyes on him?
He is logging in right now, so he should be on in just a moment, sir.
Okay, while we're waiting for him, we're going to try to cover just a little bit of business. Senator Mounts, are you available for just a minute?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Chairman.
Would you like? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, at the conclusion of last week's meeting, of the House members had the House was convening, so the House members had to depart. Senator Carrozza and I continued the meeting. Coastal Hospice Monica Escalante was describing a concern of hospices generally regarding reimbursement and for residential situations for residential clients. And the Hospice Association has written a letter to the HSCRC. Senator Carrozza recommended that because I'm on Senate Finance, we do healthcare, that we try to offer our office to try to assist. After looking at the issue, this is an HSCRC issue. It's a Healthcare Cost Review Commission item, and they'll be reviewing these reimbursements. The issue here is that the Hospice Association has already written a letter to the HSCRC, and from our determination and talking to the Hospice Association, the best thing that we could do, or one thing we could do as a delegation, is to write a letter in support of the letter that the Hospice Association has already submitted to the HSCRC. I've looked into that. It seems to me to be a very fair, reasonable, and a pragmatic thing for us to do as a delegation. However, I don't want to put everybody on the spot at the moment. I just wanted to offer my support for that, and it's something that I would endorse as a good thing for our delegation to do, to support hospices generally as they fight for reimbursement dollars, and for our constituents who really need hospice care. And right now, what's going on is they're going to nursing homes when they should be at hospice. And they're going to nursing homes because Medicaid will only cover that nursing home environment. And so I would put it to the chair of the delegation to consider us as a group contacting the HSCRC to offer our support for the hospice associations.
Okay, and Delegate Hartman, you had a comment or a question?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So How many people actually have physical brick and mortar hospice facilities in their district? Is it, aside from Coastal Hospice, there's the one in Salisbury? Are there other? So my understanding is this only impacts the room and board for those, stays. Right now, there's coverage for home hospice care. So a question I reached out to one of the board of directors with, if a facility starts taking Medicare for this, is the asset that the community built, $6 million, I believe, for the Stansel House, and that's just sticks in my head right now. I know that that's not fully paid off, but what assurance does the community have if they open this up to Medicare or whatever, that there's going to be availability for self-pay? I'm a huge fan of hospice. Both of my parents spent their final days in the Stansel House, and it's a huge asset to the community. But my question is, and I haven't been yet, once we open that floodgate, how do we balance the availability? There's 12 beds in northern Worcester County. And I understand there's a huge financial need. So I wouldn't be in a position to vote until I get those answers.
All right, so Delegate Hartman, what we'll do, I see the secretary is on now. This was definitely an agenda comment that I wanted to get started while we were waiting. So why don't we park that conversation until later in the agenda? Thank you for your comments. Secretary Lopez, good morning.
Good morning, everyone.
Hi, the floor is yours.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me and inviting me to join you. I'm grateful to all of you. And I will say that over the course of the last year in the role, I have had the great privilege of being in each of your counties, working with each of your local departments of social services multiple times, and have been thrilled to be in each of your communities. So thank you for those invitations from the local departments of social services. I'd like to take a few minutes to ground the work and in some ways do a full circle back to those first few weeks in the role where all of the members of the Moore-Miller cabinet were asked to meet with members of the Senate and the House. And early on, Governor Moore and Lieutenant Governor Miller made clear to us that we were to be partners with the legislature and to engage. And that is exactly what we've done and we will continue to do. We have led our department, the Department of Human Services, grounded in the 12 values of the Moore-Miller administration. I want to speak to come up with some of those. Every single time I gather people from our department and or speak publicly, I reference values and ground our work in them. And I want to talk a little bit about some of the progress that's been made and sort of where we begin to head and speak with the intentionality about moving with integrity and speaking truth to some of the challenges that our department has faced. So early on, I framed everything we were going to do around 3 Ps: people, policy, and practice, with the belief that when we invest deeply in our people, whether they are team members like staff, state employees, or our contractors, or the people in whose names we serve, and we ground our policy in them by listening to them and engaging them and respecting them, we will do so with dignity and help shape our policies. That's the way in which we should lead the department, and all the policy that then gets written up has to translate into practice, which is how we actually engage Marylanders across the state. I'm going to lift up a couple of key things that I imagine are on your minds, and or if they're not, I want to put them on your radar, that are also included in the governor's budget and will have significant impact for all of Marylanders. So I'm going to speak first of all to the issue of people, and very specifically around vacancy rates and how we are trying to desperately turn around DHS's reputation for not being able to return our phone calls, to return emails in a timely way, or to answer our phones. These are 3 things I heard consistently coming into the job and have directly addressed, and I want to give some specific examples about these things. Number 1, on January 1st of 2023, our department had a vacancy rate of 15.2%. We had just about 912 vacant positions, many of those public-facing, directly serving the people in each of your jurisdictions. As of December 31st, our department had a vacancy rate of 9.69%, with only 582 positions vacant, for a total reduction of 330, or a reduction of 5.51%. We went from one of the worst vacancy rates in the entire state of Maryland to actually one of the best. That didn't happen accidentally. It was intentional and moving with the kind of urgency that the governor had asked us to move. Similarly, When we look at the calendar year of 2023, we had a turnover rate across the department in all 24 jurisdictions of 13.96% for calendar year 2023, and calendar year 2022 was 18.25%, or a reduction of 4.29%. I led with that because we are looking at data religiously and using it to drive our strategy and being truthful and honest about where the improvements need to be made. We tie that in terms of prioritizing how we serve our people and how that ties to policy. It was the policy of the state of Maryland on January 1st of 2023 to do nothing in the replacement of stolen benefits for Marylanders in all 24 jurisdictions who, through no fault of their own, through skimming and other kinds of fraud, people were having their benefits stolen. This is actually food, groceries out of children's mouths. The majority of people who receive benefits in the state of Maryland are children. We can disaggregate that data by county. We better understand how that impacts our seniors and single adults. But most importantly, we moved with great urgency to be the first state in the nation to be able to respond to the federal government's budget, apply for and get approved for the nation's first ever replacement of stolen benefits in the country. And so Maryland has led that way. Well, nothing is perfect, and we aren't perfect. We are thrilled to report that we have, as of yesterday, replaced benefits for over 30,000 households as of January 18th, to the tune of 18.7 million stolen cash and SNAP benefits. In addition to the leveraging federal funds, which is something that our department has not historically done over the course of the last near decade, we made sure that we could stretch Maryland's dollars and general fund dollars in partnership with the legislature and the Senate and House bill that you passed last year and that was signed into law by the governor to make sure that we could be thoughtful about how we engage Marylanders in the replacement of these benefits. We did so by being thoughtful around how we were going to make sure we didn't leave any federal money on the table and that we were prudent and disciplined about the use of state general fund dollars. You will see actually some course corrections and intent clarification come before you in this session around how to make sure that we have a steady funding stream from a federal and state perspective. So we're thoughtful about both the replacement, but also more importantly, how we're going to protect benefits to reduce the theft that's happening, not just in Maryland, but across the country. That is not a Maryland issue alone. It's something national, and we are working closely. Maryland has also led the way by testing innovative ways to reduce theft by things like the lock and unlock card feature, which we were one of the first states in the nation to test out. And also our deliberate outreach to communities through advocates, community-based organizations, our local departments of social service. I then want to transition your attention, because I'm talking about the leveraging of federal funds and state funds, to something, unfortunately, that we found coming into office in the Department of Human Services. And that was, unfortunately, a failure to apply for and to leverage federal grants and federal money consistently. And though I am saddened to report, I want to also frame that we are thrilled to report action in a couple areas. You might recall that in 2018, there was a law passed called the Family First Prevention and Services Act. It was the first significant reform in Title IV-E of the Social Security Act, which funds foster care specifically, or child welfare. Unfortunately, Maryland, since that law was passed, has drawn down $0 of that federal dollars, zero. And we now have had to build over the last couple of months an infrastructure to deliberately leverage federal dollars to make sure that we are taking care of and responding to in a respectful way the children that are in foster care in the state of Maryland. As of yesterday, we had 3,790 children in the state's care and custody across all 24 jurisdictions. One of the things that we've done religiously is daily track and use data to better understand where are the kids, what's happening to them, in what jurisdictions, how long have they been in care, and what is happening. That entire infrastructure we had to build from scratch to be able to monitor that kind of thing every day. But why I mentioned the Federal Family First Prevention and Services Act is that it's going to take time to course correct this. And the governor's budget includes a historic investing in what we call rate reform. The state of Maryland, for nearly 2 decades, has had contentious debates over being able to make sure we streamline how we fund the providers who take care of the kids. These are kids who are cared for in each of your jurisdictions in the delegation, ranging from group care homes to licensed foster care homes to therapeutic group homes, et cetera. And that investment is a significant investment from the state general fund to leverage many more millions of federal dollars. The law was specific that it changed child welfare in the nation, and that we had to have what's called qualified residential treatment programs that are grounded in evidence and science around how we care for kids. I'm bringing this to your attention because not only is it a step in the right direction for Maryland, it's a step in the right direction nationally so that we can actually catch up in terms of how we provide preventative services and ultimately make sure that we reduce the total number of kids in foster care at all. If I would want you to leave with one sentiment of our department and this new era, it's that we don't want kids to come into care to begin with. We want to provide the right kinds of prevention support to support their families, to make sure that they do not end up in stranger care, and that we prioritize kin and family first. The evidence is compelling nationally that children do better when they are with kin, kin by blood or by choice, whether it's an auntie or grandmother or a neighbor in whose care the family wants. But we are dramatically transforming around 5 pillars our child welfare work in this department. First, we want to fully implement the Family First Prevention and Services Act and truly build for Maryland a world-class prevention services system for kids, youth, and their families, really focusing on 0 to 5. Why? We don't want kids to grow up in government. Government cannot raise children. We don't do, as a nation, a good job. And Maryland is no different there. We want them raised with family. Number 2, we will expand our intervention efforts, such as family finding and kinship care supports. Maryland has not been on the cutting edge of this, and we want to be thoughtful about that. On one hand, Maryland has the second lowest rate of entry, but if children and families get into foster care in this country, unfortunately, they last too long in our system. And we have a problem in Maryland around aging out too many teens. Year after year for the last decade, between 600 and 800 young people are aged out between the ages of 18 and 21. And those are young people who oftentimes are not connected to family, kinship support, or networks, school, or job. Why would Maryland do that? The answer is we don't. Third, we want to enhance our reunification services for families and use technology to better serve the way in which we connect people. Fourth, we want to make sure we're supporting youth transitioning from foster care to make sure that we reduce that total number and the practice of making sure that we're engaging young people earlier on and making sure they have the right supports. And fifth, build out Maryland's licensed provider network. As a quick tidbit, for example, our team convened providers across the state of Maryland for the first time this last summer in over 4 years. That predates COVID. So the engagement of providers, the honest conversations, the courageous conversations we have to make sure to reduce the number of, for example, hospital overstays or hotel stays, we are not shying away from. We are being deliberate about using data to break down the myths that there aren't enough beds in Maryland. I want to transition then to another piece which connects, again, people, policy, and practice. You've probably heard that there is some important and positive movement around the way in which we're trying to provide benefits to children across the country. Specifically, the United States Department of Agriculture has invited states across the country to join them in continually providing additional benefits to children during the summer months when they are unable to access free or reduced lunches or breakfasts. We have signaled that Maryland is interested in partnering with the USDA, and the governor's budget includes a significant investment of state general fund dollars that we're repurposing from existing dollars, specifically $9 million, to leverage $69 million in federal dollars. To give you context about how that plays into Maryland's history, in 2019, Maryland enacted the Maryland Summer SNAP program for children, and in that year alone served 3,923 children in 4 jurisdictions. As of summer of 2023, 14 jurisdictions participated with 90,571 children served. This significant partnership between the state of Maryland and the federal government will allow us to leverage all the money I just mentioned to serve 500,000 children in all 24 of Maryland's jurisdictions. This is an example of using our people, our policy, and our practice to move the different kind of urgency in a different way. I want to close before I take questions from all of you on any item you'd like to discuss on the posture that I'm hoping you're beginning to see from the Department of Human Services. Again, I mentioned earlier that one of the reputations we have is that we don't answer our phones, we don't respond to our emails, and we're not timely in getting back to people. We're desperately trying to change that. And one of the ways we're doing that is by looking at data that had never been tracked around our customer service call center. When I came into office on behalf of the administration that very first week, asked for data on how we tracked customer complaints from all 24 jurisdictions. The answer was, we don't. Now we have in place an effective system to better track wait times, what happens in those cases, so that we actually track. And I personally, as secretary, in addition to our leadership team, call customers in all 24 jurisdictions to make sure we have responded to the needs of your people, the people in whose names you serve. Let me give you some data to frame that up. Specifically, in early 2023, the DHS call center customers consistently experienced across all 24 jurisdictions average wait times of over 15 minutes to get a hold of a human, with more than 30% calls that were abandoned, meaning someone took time to call us and then got frustrated and either hung up or they were hung up on. Turning that culture around is easier said than done. But I'm thrilled to report that by July of 2023, we saw a consistent month-over-month drop in wait times because we began to track it, hold people accountable, and lift up the bar of excellence on customer service. By December of 2023, the average wait time was down to 1 minute and 19 seconds. That represents a 94% decrease from the high of 20 minutes and 6 seconds in March. That didn't happen accidentally. We were courageous. We challenged the status quo, held our contractors accountable for performance, and are measuring this every single day. Specifically, we send out by the end of each day a highlight of 3 customer complaints to all 24 jurisdictions, and we expect movement, follow-up, and accountability from all of our jurisdictions. And then we ask ourselves, what might we have done differently? How might we learn from these things so that we can continue to improve and raise the bar of excellence? The final thing I want to add is that you will see 3 things from us moving forward in this legislative session and beyond. 1, we will engage you, your partners, your staffs. We respect you and your roles. We will always be responsive to you. And if we aren't, I want to hear about it directly. Number 2, we will ground our responses to you, the governor, and the rest of the people of Maryland in evidence and science, not just on myth or policy by myth, which is something I've inherited in this department. And 3rd, we will have an opinion. It might be a yes, we concur with you, no, we respectfully disagree, or it's a neutral position, but we will do so with intention and with integrity. With that said, I'm happy to take any questions from any of you.
Thank you, Secretary Lopez. Delegate Hornberger.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I see that you're hard at work, and I really applaud you championing customer service. I think that's incredible, and the dividends that it's shown already are very impressive. One of the things that I've struggled to understand, and I can't speak for my peers, is in terms of the foster care. Can you help us understand what is the difference in roles and responsibilities between county government and state government?
Sure.
And because even ourselves, sometimes we get lost and sort of who's on first. And when someone comes to me with a foster issue, same thing. I struggle with which direction to point them in.
Great.
Who's the authority having jurisdiction? Mm-hmm. If you could just explain.
Sure. I'm happy to.
Yep.
And I'm glad you asked it. And I'll do a little bit of a 101 and then always offer to all of you, happy to sit down with you in more detail. For example, every single day, we now track, I look at which kids are in what jurisdiction. So I, for example, could tell you, what jurisdiction are you from, sir?
Cecil County.
Cecil County. So for example, I know that as of yesterday, the foster care load in Cecil County is 101 children in the care and custody of the state of Maryland. Specifically, the government and the courts have put the care and custody in Cecil County Local Department of Social Services. Real quick, there are two major models of care in the United States of America in child welfare. One is a county administered system where there's a state oversight, but each county acts sort of independently, and there's state administered and state run, which is what Maryland is. However, what we look like to the outside person is the other, which is Cecil County might run things a particular way, but Queen Anne's might run it another. While there are certain things that we would argue are important to customize to respect the local flavor of the jurisdiction, there's some things that I'm clearly saying to all 24 directors, we will do the same because we are the state of Maryland. I will say to you as legislators, one of the things that has caused is reasons for why we get sued. So to be very clear in the answer to your question, those lawsuits now don't say Padilla, my predecessor, they say, TJ versus Lopez. Why? I'm the secretary of the department. They're suing the state of Maryland.
Okay.
We spend an extraordinary amount of our time every single week now responding to lawsuits that have been in the works for years, one of them 40 years. We have deliberately engaged all 24 local directors of social services. Why? They were not engaged in the operation of the State Department of Human Services. That's not the way we or I lead. We lead from courage. We brought them to the table. We meet regularly. We engage with them regularly. We are showing them data they had never seen before. That doesn't make any sense to me. So if you ever have a question in your county, the first stop is your local Department of Social Services. That relationship between you all and your staff and the LDSS director, most important. If they can't answer the question, you call us. We have what's called the Social Services Administration, which is the one of three major parts of DHS, which run all of adult protective services. So think elderly abuse, think people who might need extra care and attention, and then all the kids in care. So that is a culture shift, sir. It is not the way we've been running the show for a while. And this, and just to be clear, this is an R or D issue. This is well over a decade old. We have to be deliberate about the engagement of local jurisdictions. And why? Because where work happens isn't on Saratoga Street in Baltimore. It happens in your community, in your neighborhood, in locals. And that bridge, we are really working hard to build, imperfect as it may be, but we're already beginning to make significant progress there.
Okay, that's tremendously helpful. Thank you.
Sure.
Delegate Hartman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Secretary, for the presentation.
Certainly.
The information you just shared, the numbers for the counties, can you share that with us?
Absolutely.
You know, and then if there's any historical data, because so we can see if those are trending, in which way they're trending for a little bit of time, I'd really appreciate as well.
Sure, sure. And
Thank you.
what jurisdiction are you from, sir?
Worcester County, Worcester,
All right.
Wycomico.
All right. So Worcester, Wycomico. So a little bit of intel on the numbers. Why I say being truthful is that I have encouraged the leadership of our team and our staff to do something that doesn't always come natural because people oftentimes feel defensive. I always say, if we don't know the answer, we say, I don't know, I'll get back to you. Or if I do know, let me try my best to share with you like what Part A is. And let me give you that example. I have in front of me a paper version of what I look at every single day, our team. This is a breakdown by all your jurisdictions. We asked your local directors if they had seen it broken down that way. The answer was no. So months ago, we put in place where they have now access to this. It was stunning to me to learn that we didn't have that. We are drowning in data, but not using the data to drive our strategy and the management of our department every single day. So I know, for example, that we can show you week to week the number. So for Wycomico County, there are 20 children in the care and custody of Wycomico LDSS. There are 22 children in Worcester County. That represents each county 1% of the total foster care population in the state. Why that matters is we would use it to say, what's happening to those 20 kids? How long have they been in care? Are they there because their families moved there recently? Are they there for a long time? How might we find kin either in those counties or somewhere else in the DMV area or somewhere else nationally? Asking those questions is legitimately and positively forcing us to confront where there are patterns and practices that we've not done, sir. So happy to share that with you. I will say to you that it is a rough cut, meaning that we extract that data every week. But what we want to do eventually, and hopefully this year, fingers crossed, is put that all up online. The challenge we've learned, though, is sometimes when the numbers are so small, we don't want to unnecessarily identify a family or a child in a community. So, for example, we take a lot of lessons from the Indian Child Welfare Act. So there's, for example, I was looking earlier before this call to prep, I was looking at how many kids, if there are any, in each of your jurisdictions who are in hotel stays. Something that's also very controversial. One child is too many, but I ask why and how. And for example, there's one child in Wycomico who is in the care and custody of the local Department of Social Services living in a hotel, right, which is not a placement, which has a one-on-one supervisor 24/7. We would not post one because that means, I don't know how many hotels you have in Wycomico, but I doubt there are 72 hotels, right? So we'd want to not have the ability to identify, it's actually 13-year-old Wayne. I've seen him walk out of the Days Inn. We want to be able to protect the child and the family, but also give you as a leader the right kind of information. So there's a balance between what we post publicly and what we give you happily as a member of the legislature.
I certainly appreciate your insight and enthusiasm. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, Senator Moutz.
Oh, thank you, Chairman and Secretary. Very good to meet you and talk to you. Thank you for making the time to be with us this morning. I know the first year has probably been quite a whirlwind. We got a lot of turf to cover. one thing that's different between our delegation and other delegations is many of our members represent areas that are much larger than other representatives and in the state legislature. Our district, I'm a senator, but it doesn't matter whether you're a senator or you're a delegate in District 37. You have 4 counties that you have to cover.
That's right.
And all of our delegation, we interact directly with all of our social services on a regular basis, not just social services, but also those networks and entities that support the Department of Social Services, including our law enforcement agencies. There are a number of activities where we work together on them. And I haven't had a chance. I suppose that you visited Wacomico, Dorchester, Talbot, and Caroline in the past year. You've come by to visit
Multiple times. I
Good.
visited all 24 jurisdictions multiple times. And my motto is no dog and pony show. I want to be part of either an existing thing you're doing or meeting. And then I always take a Q&A session with staff or others in the community, because I hate having staffed all of my career, either electeds or senior leaders. I hate the work that goes into the show. I get we have to take pictures of the group. We all have to do that. That's part of your job. That's part of my job representing the governor.
Well,
But
Secretary,
I feel
we
like-
don't, we don't do any hating on Eastern Shore. There's no hate.
No, you know what I mean. It's just moving from. I think staff are surprised by my culture of let us make sure that when we're doing something together, it's advancing your existing work or answering a question and not putting on a show for each other. And why that matters to me is there's too much work to do. Too much work to do in your jurisdiction to put on a show. That's really what I meant.
Yeah, and there's an interesting dynamic, and I very much appreciate your energy and your focus. But there are also some things that we do where we sort of drive policy. And I'd encourage you to reach out to us. I haven't had a chance to meet with you, but there's some things that the agency wants to do, some things the government wants to do, but they're not necessarily benefiting the citizens. And there's some things the citizens talk to us about where, we could be, I like the phrase work smarter, not harder, I don't have any silver bullet. There's no criticism or anything like that. I want to praise you and thank you for everything you're doing. But I would just encourage you in the upcoming couple of years, when you're in Talbot, Caroline, Dorchester, just a quick email to the state representatives. Typically, we all can't be there because we have jobs and things like that. But usually all of us have a project or something that we're working on. I think everything you mentioned today, I have a list. I have a list of, things. And I think the partnership at your state representative level will also really help facilitate. It sounds to me like you want grassroots, you want results. I think that that partnership, I think we can be a great resource to you is what I'm trying to say. And
thank you, Senator. Thank you.
I just wanted to thank you again. And your office should have all of our numbers. If they have any trouble, just, look us up, email, cell phone, whatever. A lot of us operate through text message. We're not that formal. It's only so much time in a day. But,
so I would say to you, I was going to offer, so I guess owning that of the things that we've done when we reached out to the local communities, it's really been through LDSSs. And I will say your remarks are reminding me that we need to improve and I need to improve that connection to electeds when I come into town. And that's an honest area for improvement. I will say to you that some of the best conversations I've had when I've been in town is when someone had heard that I was coming to town and then actually a delegate had breakfast with me. So I can think of specific times. And so being more deliberate, which is also what I'm hearing is more important. Rachel Sledge is on our call, who is the director of the Office of Government Affairs, and Heather Zanoni is on our call, who is the Assistant Secretary for Policy. That is the shop for which all of our work with the General Assembly comes into play. Happy to schedule a time with you and your team, both during session and off-site in your community during the off times of the legislative session for any of you. Please feel free to reach out to Rachel. And all of you, I've said to Rachel, you're more than welcome to have my work cell. If you want to reach out directly, please do so.
Okay.
Secretary, thank you. And Rachel's been fantastic. So thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Secretary. And on behalf of the Eastern Shore delegation, thank you for your briefing and your enthusiasm for a very important department for our citizens. So thank you for your time.
I appreciate you all. I look forward to seeing you in person during the assembly session.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Next on the agenda, a presentation by the Maryland Department of State Police. Secretary Colonel Roland Butler Jr. Thank you for your patience. Good morning.
Yes, sir. Good morning. Thank you for the invitation to be here today. I am Colonel Roland L. Butler Jr., Superintendent of the Maryland Department of State Police. We have a significant investment in Maryland's Eastern Shore, as we do with all the communities we serve. Ensuring public safety on the Eastern Shore community is one of the top priorities of the Maryland Department of State Police. Our commitment is to safety of the residents and those who travel through the Eastern Shore communities daily. When you start to talk about investments in the Eastern Shore, our capital investments include a brand new Berlin Barrack in Worcester County. As you know, we've had a foothold in Worcester County for quite some time. The Berlin Barrack will also become not only the home to our troopers, but also the home to a new forensic sciences laboratory. With 21st century enhancements, the lab will become the new Maryland Eastern Shore Regional Crime Lab. One of the things that makes that so important, not only does it serve those 5 barracks to include Cecil County up at the very top, making it 6, but it also serves the 8 sheriffs that serve across the Eastern Shore. It's going to expedite them getting caseloads through the court system a lot quicker, getting their drug and evidence processed, as well as evidence for criminal cases. It's a giant step forward for the Maryland State Police. You know, we operate a lot out of our main crime lab in Pikesville. It's going to give us the ability to do some things that are truly exceptional for the folks on the Eastern Shore. We've already realized these benefits out in Western Maryland when we had the Hagerstown Barrack, which was remodeled years back, actually a brand new barrack, and we put a crime lab at the very top of that. So if you really think about it, from the first time the Berlin Barrack went operational back in 1976, troopers and citizens have been there to answer the call 24/7. We do not anticipate this changing. We think it'll actually enhance things to have a newer facility, more attractive not only to the citizens, but also for recruiting. We're looking at a total investment of a little over $34 million in this particular project. Obviously, it'll host the Eastern Region Forensic Laboratory, consisting of 4 specific types of forensic disciplines: latent prints, controlled dangerous substances, toxicology, and computer crimes. The barrack is also designed to conserve energy per the standards of the International Green Construction Code. And if you want to go back and think about this barrack again, think about the educational institutions you have over there and those young people that may be interested in internships, things like that. I know there's a lot of interest that's generated from TV programs that we see in the forensic field. The construction is going very, very well. You know, hopefully today's snow doesn't set it back at all. I think we have the exterior walls up and we're moving at a really good pace. I'd like to thank those over at DBM for everything they've done to facilitate this construction project. When we talk about the Eastern Shore, we really concentrate on the 5 barracks on the shore. Cecil County does come up over the top and provide services to the upper shore, but we're looking at just over 200 and some odd troopers assigned to the shore. They're handling regular calls for service, special enforcement initiatives with your local and state partners, safety initiatives such as drunk driving enforcement, distracted driving, work zone, accident prevention. We're not just the highway patrol. Our initiatives also include warrant services, drug enforcement initiatives, and criminal investigations. We frequently increase our police presence for large events. I think you've seen what we do when it comes to Bike Week, H2OI, the former car rallies that it seems they change their name every week. But I think at this point, working with the locals, we've got them to change their location. They weren't here in Ocean City last year. They went to this year, they went up to New Jersey. St. Patrick's Day enforcements, other initiatives, which you guys are forced to deal with increased volumes of traffic. We do work hand in hand with our local partners. We also manage potential emergencies, everything from flooding to hurricanes, you name it. We're working hand in hand with your partners over there to ensure the safety of the citizens there. We have a very strong relationship with our allied partners on the Eastern Shore. As you know, you have 8 sheriffs over there. 3 of those 8, fortunately, are former MSP troopers. That's allowed us to gain some synergy and a foothold with the remaining 5. We're in regular contact with them, assisting them not only with criminal investigations, but also with administrative investigations. That's something that's done with a simple phone call or an email. We touch base and we resolve the issue. We're doing year-round community outreach at the local barracks. The local barrack commanders, they're the eyes and ears of the state police there, whether it's Shop with a Cop, the law enforcement torch run to support the athletes of the Special Olympics, to school safety programs, you know, War on the Shore kickball event, very popular up on the northern end of the shore, holiday parades, our Explorer program, the Waterfowl Festival. We try to get involved in everything that impacts the people on the shore. We want to have that relationship. We start talking about some of the special things that are done. We think about Cambridge and Salisbury. The Criminal Investigations Bureau has been really at the forefront of preventing and reducing violent crime in Maryland, and it's something that's critical to the Maryland State Police mission. We focus on cross-jurisdictional, county-to-county issues, cross-border, going from one state to another, obviously, recognizing that crime knows no boundaries. Particularly on the shore, it's nothing for something, a small investigation to start off from a citizen contact, a tip, a traffic stop, and next thing you know, you're across the state line into Delaware, or, you know, you come back over this way across the bridge and you're up into Pennsylvania with something that has a unique impact on the shore. We work hand in hand to address those issues. Another big perk that everybody seems to benefit from is the Maryland Gun Center. It's staffed 24/7, and during 2023 alone, 844 cases investigated for Eastern Shore departments alone. It's a 24/7 go-to if any law enforcement agency has an issue dealing with combating gun violence or information related to a handgun or a long rifle arrest. They can call that number and get the assistance they need, not only with tracking down that weapon, but also understanding what charges should be preferred in that matter. Another prong to CID's approach is the Maryland State Police Apprehension Team. They work to serve the warrants on the most serious offenders within the state. In total, in 2023 on the Eastern Shore, MSAT served 11 homicide warrants alone. Areas like Easton, Cambridge, Salisbury. These are things that require immediate action and attention. They handle these 24/7. In addition to those homicide warrants, you're looking at over 116 felony warrants that were served, and an additional 70 or so misdemeanor warrants. You know, these people, the warrant is usually not the only issue that they're involved in. So MSAT is involved in removing some of the most dangerous people from our streets. While the State Police Criminal Investigation Division does a lot with investigations with our partners, we're also educating our partners. We're not coming in and trying to take over. We're trying to make sure everybody gets better as a whole. So when we reach out, it's a full scope of public safety services. What you're talking about here is working with parole and probation, different entities within the state to help make sure that we all understand our mission and we make each other better. We operate 2 drug task forces on the Eastern Shore, one in Kent County, the other being in Queen Anne's County. And those task forces are critical. Just like any other place, you know, crime is not localized, be it upper shore, lower shore, with the, you know, the eastern area typically being the dividing line. It travels up and down the shore and it comes across the bridge. And it helps to have that synergy and that partnership with other entities where we can get out there and address it. And we don't have to stop because there's a boundary in someone's mind. The investigative efforts, they're well known over there. We went from a high in overdoses in 2018 of 122 and 16 deaths to 35 overdoses and 9 deaths in 2023. So clearly what they're doing, working as a unit, is working to, 1, reduce drug use, 2, reduce deaths. Lower shore investigations, CIB barracks, working with barrack personnel, criminal investigators were assigned 349 cases and successfully closed 94.5% of those. And we're talking cases that range from attempted murder, first degree assaults, in which there were 24, sex crimes, in which we investigated 37, child abuse, 14, electronic crimes against children, solicitation, child pornography, 117, thefts, 24, burglaries, 10, and human trafficking, 1 case. In 2023, the drug investigators were also assigned 202 narcotics cases. The breakdown of their cases, they made 65 total arrests. They preferred charges 376 against individuals. They served 320 search warrants, 454 subpoenas, seized 58 guns, and in currency, they seized almost $590,000 over that period of time. There's a lot of work being done by the MSP on the Eastern Shore, and it's not just the MSP. MSP prides itself on its partnership with the allies over there on the shore. As I said earlier, we're seriously invested in doing what we can to build relationships, not only with the community, but also protect the community. We're well aware that with police recruiting being what it is, every time you see a uniformed trooper or every time someone has a contact with the trooper, there is the potential for that individual to step into one of our roles. And that's something we pride ourselves on. That being said, do you have any questions?
Thank you, Colonel. I'm certain we're going to have questions. Just if I could, thank you and the men and women of the Maryland State Police. Over the past couple of years, we've been inviting different cabinet secretaries and departments through, and we could certainly spend the next 2 hours with you learning and understanding better, because it is a front and center issue for us as representatives from the Eastern Shore to support you and your mission. But I'm going to leave it to the many hands you're going to see follow. And to my friends with CASA, we appreciate your patience. I'm sure this is going to be very important for the Eastern Shore delegation today. Thank you. So I didn't follow who had the hand up first. Why don't we start with Senator Carrozza?
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks to all on the Zoom, and hello to my colleagues. 2 quick questions, Colonel. Thanks for being with us today.
Yes, ma'am.
My quick questions are, you emphasized the collaboration with the Maryland State Police and the local law enforcement agencies. And when I talk to others from other areas, they're especially impressed with the collaboration on the shore. My first quick question is there anything that you need to further strengthen that coordination? And 2, wanted to make you aware that there are several crime bills that have been introduced. There's been a bipartisan effort on the Senate and the House side, as well as others have introduced crime legislation. The governor has made that a priority. He says everything's on the table, and expressed an interest in a couple of the bills, the Violent Offenders Act, as well as the legislation to increase penalties for a stolen firearm. I just wanted to bring these to your attention and, ask if, for your support, or if you could look at them and continue to work with the governor on those crime proposals.
If it's okay, Senator, I'll take number 2 first. We continue to work hand in hand, especially the MSP Legislative Affairs Unit, working with the governor's office to put the best packages forward to see where citizens need the most help. So that's something we will continue to do. We'll continue to work with each of you actively, and I thank you for your support. If we come back to that very first question, what you're doing right now is phenomenal. The level of contact and coordination you have between my barrack commanders, my troop commanders, those that run CID, and the local sheriffs is phenomenal. I would encourage you to keep those communications going. Criminal investigations are changing. They're no longer done on pen and paper 24/7, 365. They're done 24/7, 365, pen, paper, computer, you name it, with human contacts. So we're constantly morphing and having to adapt. So there's no way of saying we're going to need X, Y, and Z next month. Next month's issues could change 2 months from then. So as long as we have that open and honest contact and coordination and understanding, I think we will continue to make strides in our fight against crime.
Colonel, thank you. And just one last comment, Mr. Chair. Just also wanted to highlight on our crime bills, we've been particularly sensitive that our own law enforcement on the shore, including Maryland State Police sergeant that was shot on Route 50 and losing Keith Hecook at Del Mar Police, as well as Wycomico Deputy Corporal Glenn Hilliard, that, the fact that we will never forget that they were killed, 2 killed and 1 shot by violent offenders. And so we are committed to working with you on those bills.
Thank you so much for your support in those matters.
Thank you, Senator. Delegate Ernst.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Colonel, welcome. I had a quick question. You made a comment about human trafficking. I'm attending a meeting tomorrow, and I wanted to know if you could elaborate on that problem briefly.
When you start to look at human trafficking, it's something that's coming out of the shadows quite quickly. It's involved everything from the internet portion with crimes against children to those that they run away thinking they're escaping whatever they think is life-changing at that point, and they find themselves trapped in a set of circumstances that they can't get out. This knows no boundaries, be it nationally, internationally, and certainly not in our state. They may leave Western Maryland and find themselves in a predicament on the Eastern Shore, We do work extremely hard with the Department of Homeland Security to cross those boundaries if there's state lines that we can't get across, and make sure we facilitate the sharing of information. And also, once that arrest is made, we also try to deconflict to make sure everybody knows what the other departments are doing. So we build a better system to navigate and manage these investigations each time we are faced with one.
Okay, was the number you used one or?
Yes,
Okay.
that was one that was MSP specific. But bear in mind, MSP operates on task force. It's nothing for a task force member that's assigned to Carroll County to come all the way over to the Eastern Shore. And many of those with Homeland Security, they would, chart the arrest.
But it's much bigger than just one that you mentioned.
It's much, much bigger than
Okay,
one.
okay. All right. I misunderstood that. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, sir.
Delegate Hartman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Colonel, for being with us. I appreciate the work you do. Coming from a law enforcement family, Dad was a retired deputy. I have a lot of respect for what you do. Just first of all, thank you for your help with the local issues. You mentioned H2OI, et cetera. You guys are very responsive when we have local needs, especially representing a district with tourism and the influx of people that we have. And your responsiveness has been much appreciated. Want to remind you, with the new lab being built in Berlin, that Worcester Tech has a forensics course there. So any opportunities you have for partnershiping or apprenticeships with those students in that, I think would be most valuable to those students and hopefully you as well. So just keep that in mind, and in any way that could work to everyone's benefit would be much appreciated.
Yes, sir. I've made that note, and we certainly will. Like I said, recruiting has changed so much over the times. We've gone from a time when we had 6,000 applications for a trooper's position down to maybe 900 or so. And also, we've recognized the need that the MDSP has so much more to offer than just a sworn law enforcement position. It could be a crime line tech. It could be an administrative position. And one of the things you've highlighted is something we've realized with the vocational high schools. They're young people that simply love to work on cars, things like that. We have a place for them. And we also give them the option. You may start there as a mechanic. If you decide you have an interest in law enforcement, I think that's a lot easier transition, since you'll have a track history with the Maryland State Police. And as long as you meet those qualifications, you can easily step in that role and come back and serve your community.
I like the way you're thinking, but the forensic program there is very popular. I think they're always at capacity. I've been there when they've been doing blood spatter stuff and a bunch of enthusiastic students. So however
Awesome.
that could work to everyone's benefit would be much appreciated. Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Yes, sir.
Delegate Hornberger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Colonel, for presenting with us today. Two questions. And especially on the Eastern Shore, we're heavily reliant on municipal officers and local police departments. I didn't hear those mentioned, but they have full access to the crime lab and all the services that you offer. Is that also correct?
Certainly, sir.
Okay. And then the second, in terms of especially in Cecil County, we have a good deal of overlap. We have our sheriff's department, which takes a lot of the calls. We have the barracks for MSP here in Northeast, which where I reside. We also have MDTA, and then as I mentioned, our local departments. How do you create synergies? I know you mentioned that you have some retired officers that are moved into different law enforcement categories. How do you coordinate all of those different law enforcement bodies to make sure that we're reducing crime and taking care of the bad actors?
Well, one of those starts off with direct communication at the top with me. Sheriff Adams in Cecil County has been a blessing to me as a superintendent, as not only a friend, a mentor, and a confidant. We understand that resources are limited. We can't afford the duplication of resources, but we can't get the job done without the other department. Without getting into specifics, we only put out a limited number of people as they do. So we must make sure that we're answering the calls for service, and those that require more than one individual there, we back each other up or provide that type of support. One of the things you see when it comes to some of the smaller departments, and I'm sure you saw the tragedy earlier this week with the overdose in Perryville.
Yeah, I did.
When they respond to a scene and they can see that they need our resources, that's instantaneous. There's no, hey, wait, let's see about this. It's a simple phone call. The phone call doesn't have to come to me. It comes to that local duty officer and the barrack commander, and they have complete autonomy to provide the services that the citizens need. The biggest thing is to get the services there. We can always do a hot wash or an after action to make sure we're doing the best we can. And that's something that happens quite frequently. Also, to include crime meetings that we participate in with local jurisdictions. We want to know what the other department is doing. This one helps reduce the amount of conflict we face as far as overlapping investigations, but it also helps us understand where the best resources may come from for an event. And then we also understand, okay, we need to build a better mousetrap. So if there's training that the sheriff's office need, we're happy to provide that. And I know the sheriff will easily reach out and say, hey, we're sponsoring this training course. Your personnel are more than welcome here.
Great. Okay, thank you. And I appreciate you working with all of those different jurisdictionals. Thanks.
Yes.
Okay, final question, Senator Mounts.
Thank you, Chairman. Colonel, great to see you. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Senator.
I need some help. I've been asked a number of times to find the number or the statistic for violent offenders that have been either released early or on the or somehow have not or not they've been released early from sentences. To find out the statistic of how many of those violent offenders have been released. Most of this stems from a shooting in Tunis Mills in Talbot County, where there was an individual who had a firearms violation in Virginia. He was released early and then came to Tunis Mills, was involved in a domestic, and then used a firearm to shoot up a house. If someone were to ask you, Colonel, how many violent offenders have been released early that are on our streets right now, how would you go about trying to ascertain that figure, either specifically or just in a general ballpark description?
Either way, that's not something that the state police tracks. That's something that would come out of public safety. Having a great relationship with Secretary Scruggs, we would start down and just drill down, hey, let's look at the sentences. Let's look at where people are coming from. Then we would have to aggregate that data for individuals with Eastern Shore addresses. That's not going to give you the complete picture because there's nothing to say that there's an individual that's released early in Western Maryland that doesn't move over there for the support of family. I think one of the things that gets lost in the mix, yes, repeat offenders are problematic, but there are also people that serve their sentences. They move to areas and you never hear from them again. I think Secretary Lopez mentioned that earlier as I was listening to part of his testimony, but that's something I could easily work with Secretary Scruggs on. We could assign a couple of analysts to drill down and provide that data to give a better understanding as to what we're actually dealing with. And not only would you have those that are released and reoffend, I think it would also give you some insight to those that are released and don't offend.
Would it be wise for me to send a letter to you directly to request assistance with this, or what's the best way to proceed with that?
Senator, you can send me that letter and we'll address it.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
I'll take it wherever it needs to go.
Be safe. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Senator, the other thing we could do is maybe add that to the agenda for public safety to come through and walk through that as well for us. Colonel, thank you very much for your presentation. Again, I'm certain that this could be a 2-hour meeting. These introduction to folks, it's no longer the new administration, but the administration now as we're learning and hearing about each of the priorities. And we truly thank you and for your service and for all the men and women that you represented here today with the delegation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And I did speed it up a little bit so we could get in questions. I did anticipate that there would be quite a few.
Yes.
So any of you all that have additional questions, please feel free to forward them and we'll address it. Okay.
Have a good day.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Next up is the court appointed special advocates presentation. Good morning to you. Let me just say the way this works with the U.S. Senator, he's doing many of these delegation meetings. And so he's plugged us in at a time certain. If you don't mind a soft break at some point, which sure is to happen here, I just want to let you know that's going to come, and that's the best way for me to handle his calendar. So he goes to probably the next delegation meeting after this one. So good morning.
Good morning. I'm Robin Davenport. I'm with the Midshore CASA program, and there are 4 of us here. With regard to before we get into our stuff, with regard to the soft break, do you know when that is, or are you asking for it now, or?
No, early on, it's at 10:10 is what it's on the calendar for us as. So we'll say that's about about right. And I won't just break right in the middle of a presentation. There may be a soft break where I can sense there's a way to break through, and we'll let the senator join in. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you all for inviting us. Our presentation is not going to take terribly long. We do have a PowerPoint that we wanted to pull up. So I think Jerona from the Lower Shore CASA is going to be trying to pull that up. But we're going to do some introductions really fast. I'm Robin Davenport, Executive Director of CASA of the Midshore. We serve Talbot, Dorchester, Queen Anne's, and Kent. We started in 1990 in Talbot County only, and I've been there since the beginning. And we expanded into Dorchester in 2009, and then Queen Anne's and Kent in 2014. I have a background in child protective services and foster care with the Anne Arundel County Department of Social Services, and then worked in the state's attorney's office in the victim witness unit. So I personally, I like knowing those systems, and it's been helpful to me at the CASA organization. And CASA stands for Court Appointed Special Advocate. So I'm not sure who's next on the intro. I think it's Amy.
Yes, good morning. Thank you, Robin, and thank you, Chairman Adams and Betsy in your office for helping to set this all up. My name is Amy Horn, and I am the Executive Director for CASA of Caroline. And I'm also a native of the Eastern Shore, born and raised in Easton. CASA of Caroline was started in 2003 by Judge Owen Wise, who was actually sitting in Talbot County, and he read a CASA report and realized it was the only report in the file that was worth reading. So since 2003, we have served well over 100 children, and we've trained more than 75 volunteers to advocate for children in foster care in Caroline County. So I will pass it on next to Jerona.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jerona Smith. I'm not sure if you guys can hear me or not.
We can.
Yes, we can hear you.
Also, can you see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. My name is Jerona Smith. I began with the CASA program in 2004. My husband and I were stationed in Groton, Connecticut. He was a submariner, and as a military spouse, I was looking for something to get involved in. So I started off my career as a volunteer, and as we moved around, I kind of worked my way up through the ranks to become director with Lower Shore CASA. Lower Shore CASA began in 2002 under Worcester Youth and Family, located in Worcester County, Maryland. And in 2012, they picked up Wycomico County. They established a program there, but due to lack of funding, that program only lasted for about a year. So they just, they had to go back to just serving Worcester only. But in 2020, talks began to expand Lower Shore CASA again. And charge of that was in part due to the administrative judge, James Sarbanes, who pushed to have the CASA program expand into Wycomico and Somerset counties. So as of today, the Lower Shore County program is fully serving the final two counties on the Lower Shore since they picked up Somerset and Wycomico. So now we serve the Tri-County region of Wycomico, Somerset, and Worcester counties. And I will pass it on to Julia.
Good morning. Thank you so much for including me today. I unfortunately didn't hear about this till a couple days ago, but I'm glad to be part of this. I am Julia Hodge, and my background is 32 years at the Department of Juvenile Services working with juvenile offenders. In 2015, I was looking for a part-time job to have a second career, and Judge Murray, who is now retired, and the Family Support Services Coordinator wanted to bring the CASA program to Cecil County. We were one of the last counties in the state of Maryland to receive the program, and I was hired as the first director of CASA of Cecil County. At that time, again, I was 20 hours a week. I was the only employee at this time. I am over 40 hours a week and have 8 staff who are serving, at this time, only 62 children, but over the years, we have served hundreds of children in foster care in Cecil County. Again, glad to be part of it. Thank you.
Jerome, if you want to bring the slideshow back up. Can you go to the next couple of slides? I think Amy's going to do an overview. Keep going.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay, so yes, we're just going to give you a brief overview of CASA, the history of the movement, review the Maryland statute that relates to CASA, give you a little bit of an idea of exactly what, the process of how a CASA becomes involved in a case. And then Robin will review some of the research that's supporting the effectiveness of CASA and the best interest advocacy we provide. So the next slide is going to show, okay, so the history of the CASA movement. So CASA, which as Robin said, stands for Court Appointed Special Advocates, was founded back in 1976 by the Honorable Judge David Sukup, who unfortunately very recently passed away. But he put out a call for volunteers who would, the next slide is going to be a video of Judge Sukup explaining it in his own words, and I think that's much better. But as you can see, in 1977, CASA had 110 volunteers and was serving 498 children. And then in 1979 was when the National Council of Juvenile and Family Court Judges coined the term court-appointed special advocates. So, Jerona, if you can move to the next slide and play the video of Judge Sukup that's embedded in there, please.
There's a little bit of a lag. It's coming.
Verified decisions about because when I didn't have anybody there.
Is it still playing?
It's not, it's possible. Try it again.
Verified decisions about because when I didn't have anybody there that was only advocating for the child, not as an attorney, but as a party to the case. I mean, every other person that's not competent to represent themselves in civil action of any kind is appointed a guardian ad litem. Now, who's more unable to represent themselves than 3 or 4 or 5 or 10-year-old, 12-year-old child? I was faced with a case where a little 3-year-old girl had been brought to Harborview Hospital, and she said the doctor there thought that she probably suffered the injuries from child abuse and called the authorities. And the mother said, no, she fell off the swing, and anyway, my boyfriend's moved out and isn't coming back. And I looked around the courtroom because I had to make a decision. I had some line about whether to take a 3-year-old child out of the only home she had ever known and put her with strangers, and how would that affect her? And if I returned her home, was she really in danger? And so I looked around the courtroom, and there was really no one there who could only speak up for that child. I thought that maybe we can get volunteers who will represent these kids, train them, and ask them to represent these children in court, and get a lawyer to represent them, because they would become a party to the action representing the child, and they would have a lawyer representing them. So I asked my bailiff to call 6 or 7 people in the community and explain this idea to them and ask if they wanted to bring a brown bag lunch up to juvenile court, talk about it. And I walked in the lunchroom, there were 50 people there. And I said, this is going to work. And it has. I thought after I retired from the bench that I had gotten all these people into this, and I probably ought to find out what it was all about myself to be a volunteer. It was one of the most satisfying and difficult things I've ever done. They almost self-select. They're the people that really care enough about children to go through the training, and then to know that they're going to spend a lot of time working for that child. Those are the ones that I think we've got right now. Judges need CASA volunteers in their courts, and they really need them to be a party to the action, because there's no one else in their courtroom. Its only function in a case is to provide a recommendation that's based on just the child's needs. Everyone else has some other role. No one else in that courtroom can do that except a volunteer CASA guardian. There's no one else to speak for the child if you're not there.
Delegate Adams, did you want to take your soft break now, or should we proceed with the PowerPoint?
I can't see if the U.S. Senator's on yet because we've got the presentation on there. So why don't you continue?
Okay.
Unless somebody chimes in real quick here, I think we're fine with just continuing.
Okay. Okay.
Hi,
Oh,
Delegate.
no, wait a minute. There
Oh,
he
he
is.
is here. Okay, sure.
Okay. So to my CASA friends,
Yep.
I know this is a challenging schedule for the U.S. Senator. So if you don't mind, we'll break for just a minute and hear some important updates and bring you guys right back on. Thank you for your patience, CASA. Senator Chris Van Hollen, good morning.
Well, good morning, Chairman Adams, and thank you in the delegation, and thank you to CASA for taking a little time out. They do amazing and important work. So I know we want to also get their full presentation, but do you want me to just jump right in,
Please.
Chairman?
Absolutely.
All right. All right. So it's great to be with you. It's great to be with the whole delegation and with your guests that are joining you here. And I did want to take this opportunity to give you an update. I hope at some point to get down to Annapolis to see you all in person. And thank you for all the good work you do on behalf of our state. And I do right out the outset here want to thank a member of my team, Alyssa Hastings, who has been our great ambassador on the Eastern Shore when I'm not able to be there in person, and provides me with great updates as well. And so on any constituent matter, on any policy matter, please feel free to reach out. So look, there's the good news yesterday was that, we did get bipartisan cooperation. The government did not shut down. But that being said, we're on a very short leash here. We've got deadlines coming up on March 1st and March 7th. The way the House of Representatives has structured this is 4 federal agencies will have enough to support their operations through March 1st and the remainder of the federal government through March 7th. So we're working to try to get a budget in place for the fiscal year that started back last October 1, which is no way to run a railroad, let alone a federal government. But in any event, we are working to try to do it. There are a number of implications, obviously, if we don't. I mean, if we go to a continuing resolution as opposed to a new budget, the problem is lots of new priorities that have come up in this year are unable to be sufficiently funded, and things that are no longer necessary that we can cut or trim, continue to get funded even when they're not necessary. So that's where we are. But let me identify some of the bigger policy issues on the horizon. One, of course, is the Farm Bill, the Ag Bill. We have extended that from the original termination deadline last year through September 30th of this year, so that we can work again on a bipartisan basis to re-up the Ag Bill, which includes really important provisions for farmers around the country, and including, of course, in Maryland, things like crop protection, some of the voluntary programs like the EQIP program for conservation, as well as some of the food and nutrition programs that are important both to the farming community as well as to the families and kids that need them. So we are working on that. The blue catfish issue is one that has rightly gotten a lot of attention in Congress. We know that we've got to deal with this invasive species, and probably the best way to deal with it is to eat our way out of it. And we have been working along with Congressman Andy Harris, Card, and myself to try to put the inspection process under the FDA, like other fish products around the country, rather than the ag department. We're working that through the process now. We are at the same time also trying to provide the Department of Agriculture with additional funds to prevent more invasive catfish. And there's $750,000 that in a grant that Senator Cardin and I included in the appropriations bill. Again, something that we need to get passed overall, but it's embedded in that bill that passed the Senate. We need to collaborate and get everything done ultimately with the House. H-2B visas and the seafood industry. There's the good news and the bad news and the good news. I mean, the good news is that we were successful in getting the overall number of H-2B visas increased by 130,000 this year. The challenge remains that it's a lottery system, and that it's impossible to run a business with certainty, obviously, if your labor depends on a lottery system. So we've introduced a bill. It's a bipartisan bill that would essentially exempt seafood processors altogether from the H-2B cap, the annual worker cap. So this is a very good bill. Right now, I'll tell you, while it has bipartisan support, it also faces some bipartisan opposition. And so we are trying to work that through the system and address concerns that have been raised on both sides of the aisle. There are a number of other measures that I think we were successful at getting about $18 million for various important projects on the Eastern Shore. Senator Cardin, myself, and others, including the Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation, as well as a number of infrastructure projects. And finally, I will say that the bipartisan infrastructure modernization bill obviously has provided a lot of resources to the state, $8 billion over the next 5 years, that is able to support a lot of the infrastructure priorities for the Eastern Shore that many of you have been pushing for. So that is sort of a quick overview of some of the issues that I...
You just hit mute.
Those are some of the issues that I know have been top of mind, but obviously we'll try and answer any other questions you've got. And again, thank you for the open line of communication.
Absolutely, of course. So members will ask questions of the U.S. Senator, and then we'll come back to the CASA presentation. Delegate Jacobs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Senator Van Hollen, and good to have you on and get a briefing this morning. I'm sure that Alyssa forwarded my concerns about the blue catfish. I could touch on a lot of issues this morning, but we'll try and keep it short and stick with the blue cats. As you know, the governor requested disaster assistance last March, and Department of Commerce rejected that in early January. And one of the big concerns that we all know that this is a major problem, and we've got to eat our way out of this. But one of the major concerns is that this invasive species is multiplying so fast. But what we found this fall, which is very concerning, is that we've found that these blue catfish have gotten big enough that they're now feeding on oyster spat. And this year, as you hopefully know, was one of the best years we've had in a long, long time on natural oyster spat in Chesapeake Bay. So it's very concerning there. And, one of the reasons for rejecting the disaster requests was they said it wasn't a financial hard enough hit on the fisheries. And I'm going like, well, what do you need it to be destroyed before you get disaster relief? Or can we get on the front end of this? Because, all of us that are involved in the fishery at one point or another in any part of the bay can understand, the proliferation of this invasive species and the damage that it's doing throughout the bay. These fish are growing so fast and they're so aggressive that by the time everybody sees the financial disaster, it may be too late. So hopefully you can keep the pressure on that we can get some of these obstacles out of the way, like the FDA inspection versus the USDA, and keep in mind that this disaster is for real. It's not it's not something that we need to wait a whole long time to see how bad it's going to get. So anything you can do there, Senator Van Hahn, I really appreciate it.
Well, Delegate Jacobs, first of all, thank you for your focus on this. Thank you for bringing it to our attention on a regular basis. I could not agree with you more about the risks and dangers. And you mentioned the oyster spat issue. We are in the aftermath of the administration's decision on the disaster assistance. We are going back to them. We may reach out to you and your colleagues to get some additional information as we circle back. As you said, and we all agree that the ultimate solution here, or a good solution, would be to get the FDA inspection so that we can get that all processed more quickly. We do have language, and again, we're working with Congressman Harris on this to try to speed it, to try to move it forward. So we look forward to following up directly with you, and please provide any other additional information you've got. Thank you.
I appreciate that, and do see Alyssa on a regular basis, and I'll make sure that we keep the communication going. And thanks again.
Thank you,
Senator Mounts.
Thanks, Chairman. I wasn't going to ask any questions because I've talked a lot this morning, but Senator, good to see you. How are you? Thank you for taking the time to be with us.
You too, John.
Has anyone briefed you on the reports of the oyster, the major tributary restoration and oyster recruitment in the bay? Sort of what's going on in the bay with oysters. The sanctuary system that started was a change in the seed and shell program, and now we have some very good empirical information that shows that the sanctuaries are not doing what they were supposed to do. That we put tens of millions of dollars into the sanctuaries, and we've got great information where the public bottoms are exceedingly stronger, more healthy, and producing more oysters than any of these restored areas. Has anyone briefed you on any of that information?
I have, Delegate Motz, I don't think I have detailed information. I mean, I've gotten some regular updates on different oyster restoration projects, both the sanctuary projects as well as the other projects. But in terms of an analysis of how the results compare, I don't think I've seen anything, certainly not recently. So I would welcome any information out on that.
Well, I appreciate that. We'd like to find some folks, get the right folks to come talk to you about it, because there's so much money that's been put into the large scale restoration that no one's going to take the time and effort to criticize it. All the information that you receive is, oh, it's doing great. This is a positive thing. And it sort of builds into what's the investment's been made. And one of the problems that government has is once it makes a decision, it can't pivot. It just doubles down. So if it's not going, it just keeps going and going and going. And I think we're at a pivotal moment. And if it's okay, I'll get with Alyssa and try to get some folks to get you some information to have another get another perspective on oyster recruitment, because as Delegate Jacobs said, it's been a phenomenal year in the Bay for recruitment, but that is only in the public oyster fishery, not in these sanctuaries. Majority of the sanctuaries really should be called cemeteries because they're covered over with mud and the oysters are dying. That's the state, those are the state sanctuaries. The federal ones where we put the millions of dollars, they're barely making it. And it should be a point of concern. So thank you, and we'll work on trying to arrange something.
Okay. Hey, Alyssa, can you just make sure that we get that information and set up any meeting if people are interested in that as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Senator Van Hollen. On behalf of the Eastern Shore delegation, we thank you for your service and care and interest for our interest, our issues here on the shore. I do want to say that Alyssa Hastings is a terrific partner with your office and with the Eastern Shore. She's always around. We see her in many of the places that we show up in our districts, and is certainly always available, and is a good advocate and for the Eastern Shore and a representative for your interests as you're trying to do the good work for us on the Eastern Shore. So thanks to the both of you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and back at you and the delegation. Look forward to staying in regular communication, and thanks for your good words about Alyssa. We're very proud of to have her as our ambassador there when I can't be there in person. So really, thank you all very much. Have a great session. Okay. All right.
So to my CASA friends, thank you for the patience, and the floor is yours. And members, after they present, we have a special newsworthy update coming from Ken Cazell regarding the shore health, and I'm not going to go any further. I'll let him share the news. All right, so CASA, thank you.
Oh, happy to share our time with the senator. Thank you so much. So thanks, Jerona, for putting the slideshow back up. I neglected to mention earlier what a great segue it was for us to have Secretary Lopez on earlier, speaking specifically about foster care. So this right here, we just wanted to share with you the state statute in the Maryland Annotated Code that really established the CASA programs and defines what the CASA programs do. So as it says, the purpose is to provide volunteers whose primary purpose is to ensure the provision of appropriate service and case planning consistent with best interests of a child who is the subject of a SINA proceeding. So that means a child in need of assistance, a child who has been found by the courts to be in need of assistance, or a custody and guardianship proceeding under this particular article, or a guardianship review proceeding, again, under this Title V, Subtitle 3 of the Family Law article. And so in the state of Maryland, CASA is considered to be a friend of the court, and we are typically treated as a party to the case. And so Jerona, the next slide, and I believe I'm passing off to you.
There it goes. Did it advance on your end? There's a lag, I'm sorry.
Yes, it did.
So to further clarify what Amy was referring to, CASA volunteers are people who are just members of the community who are willing to become volunteers and advocate in the courts on behalf of abused and neglected children. And CASA volunteers, they have to complete a comprehensive criminal background check simply because, you're working with children, and anybody that works in a profession who's dealing with kids knows that there is a background check that has to be completed. We conduct interviews. We want to talk to the people who are looking to become volunteers. Their reference checks. These volunteers also have to go through a pre-service training. We don't just throw them out there and expect them to know how to become the best advocate or how to speak to the best interests of a child. There's a 30-hour training that they have to go through. And on top of those 30 hours, there's that continuing education that they have to complete throughout the year. So there's ongoing learning. And most importantly, these volunteers have ongoing supervision by CASA staff, and the CASA supervisors act as guides. They provide resources. They're there to help the volunteers better assist and advocate for these children. And volunteers, lastly, must be 21 years of age or older. And so what do CASA volunteers do, and how are we appointed to kids? Typically, children enter the courts when they are deemed children in need of assistance. Most of the time, they're pulled out of the home and placed in foster care. Not all of the time, but most of the time. So during these hearings, we call them adjudication, dispositions, and some of you may be familiar with that terminology, the language. But during these hearings, a judge actually appoints the CASA program to a child. And then it's up to the program to match the volunteer to the child, or match the child to a volunteer. So once that match is made, there's something that happened in between that. There's a lot of paperwork that happens. The appointment from the judge is actually a physical piece of paper that is a formal appointment letter that goes with that appointment that we present to different parties to show them that we have been assigned by the courts. After that appointment is made and the child is connected with the volunteer, that volunteer meets with the child and gets to know them. We typically have what we call initial visit, where within my program, what we do is one of the staff members goes along with the volunteer to conduct the home visit, which could be at a foster home or it could be in a neutral location out in town. And what the volunteer does is they get to meet the child, and what the staff member does is they introduce the foster parent to the program. They give them information about CASA and what we do. So the volunteer has a requirement to meet with the child at least once per month. And we ask them to do this simply because it helps them to build a rapport with that child. Because if you don't know the child, they'd be less reluctant to share their wishes and their thoughts about their situation. And so because we've received an appointment letter from the judge, that is like we call it here our golden ticket to have communication with anyone involved in that child's case. We can speak to biological parents, we can speak to foster parents, the doctors, therapists, social workers, teachers, attorneys, all because we have that official appointment letter from the courts. And so after the volunteer has built a rapport with the child, conducting their visits, the CASA volunteer is then able to provide advocacy in that child's best interest in the court. And how do we do that? We do that through our reports. We make recommendations to the judge that speak to that child's best interest. And when we bring on volunteers, we ask that their goal be to advocate for that child until they are returned home, which means reunified with their biological, fictive kin, whomever, or until they're placed in a safe and permanent home and the case is closed. So that is how children are appointed to our program, and those are the type of advocacy that we provide and how we do it. So in the state of Maryland, there are 4,214 children in foster care. And this was at the end of fiscal year 2022. And only a fraction, which was approximately 33%, of those children had a CASA volunteer. And there are 14 programs across the state of Maryland, 14 CASA programs who are part of a statewide network that is assisted by Maryland CASA, which is a standalone nonprofit organization. And so in fiscal year 2023, CASA of the Midshore, which is directed by Robin, served 67 children, which represent 95% of the children in foster care. for her area. In Caroline County, which is Amy's county, she served 20 children, which represents approximately 87% of the children in foster care. And that's in Caroline County. Lower Shore, which is Wycomico, Worcester, and Somerset County, serves 77 children, which represents approximately 84% of the children in foster care, and that's my jurisdiction. So in Cecil County, which is Julia's county, served approximately 62 children who reside in foster care.
So overall, I think it's important for you guys to know that national studies and local studies show that CASA's involvement with children absolutely impacts positive outcomes, just short-term and long-term. And something we neglected to say is we are all standalone nonprofits. So even though we're part of a network, we have our own boards of directors, we have to raise our own money. So we're all just standalone, even though we try to work together as much as we can. But these are some of the cool things that have been studied over time. So when CASA volunteers are appointed, the children's needs are identified sooner, and services to meet those needs are put into place much more quickly than for children and their families, than for those kids in foster care without CASA volunteers. Frequently, children with CASA volunteers experience fewer foster placements, which is great. You heard the secretary earlier talking about foster care in this state. He was not exaggerating. Just as an example, right now we have 30 children in Dorchester County. 30 Dorchester County children are in foster care. There are only 4 foster homes in Dorchester County. So all of those other kids are in counties out of their home jurisdiction. So it's a big problem. Anyway, the less the children have to move, the better it is for them. Most CASA reports are accepted by the court. Most of our recommendations are accepted by the court and put into the court order. And then interestingly enough, children with CASA volunteers have been found to perform better in school, both academically and behaviorally. And that may just be that they're not truant any longer. And the reason, it's kind of hypothetical, but the reason is that they know somebody is looking out for them, which leads to this final bullet, that over time we have seen that children with CASA volunteers absolutely report higher levels of hope. Their self-esteem is better. They feel better about their future. And it's linked to the fact that there's one person who has stuck with them through the entire time they've been in foster care. Many times these children experience multiple caseworkers, multiple schools, multiple therapists, multiple everything, and usually they have one CASA. So that's pretty exciting, and it tells these children that they matter, which is one of the things that I think is the most exciting indirect result. Joanna, you can head to the next slide now. Also, children who've had CASA volunteers, after their cases close, they are much less likely, like half as likely, to re-enter the child welfare system due to re-victimization. So that's a pretty significant piece of data. They are more likely to achieve permanency, and that can either be by being reunited with a birth parent or relative, and they're also more likely to be adopted, meaning they're not languishing in foster care, which again is a good thing. And if you want to go to the last slide, Jerona. So this was more looking at judicial use, and truly CASA programs are wonderful, and we do a lot of day-to-day advocacy with agency partners. But the bottom line is, if judges are not using our work product, then it's not going to help the kids as much. However, most judges who are working with CASA programs want a CASA on every case. 93% of judges report an overall positive experience with the program, and things that judges are noticing is that CASA is promoting long-term well-being, recommending appropriate services to children and family, and overall helping to enhance child well-being. So when we are not appointed to cases, it's primarily because we either don't have the staff capacity to supervise volunteers, and or we don't have enough volunteers to provide to all of the kids. And those two last things are kind of hand in hand, because there is a requirement that we have a ratio of a professional paid supervisor to volunteers. So we can't just have hundreds of volunteers and one supervisor. So that in a nutshell, I think this takes us to the Q&A slide. We've probably gone too fast through some of this, but I think it's given you a little bit, I hope it's given you a little bit of a sense of who we are. But if there are questions, we are certainly happy to try and field them.
Thank you very much. And it was a great presentation. I learned a few things that I did not know. And I do have a question, but I'll wait and see if other members have questions. Delegate Ernst?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a brief question on juvenile crime and what have you. You all have probably been involved in the hearings and listened to it. What do you think of the direction Maryland's going as far as addressing juvenile crime?
I'll take this. I'm sorry. I'll take this first because I'm not on mute, but we are not working with the children who are juvenile delinquents. That's a really important distinction. We are working with children who've been placed in foster care because they have been hurt. They've been maltreated. There are studies that show that CASA volunteers help prevent kids from moving farther along that continuum and then ending up in the juvenile justice setting. But I can't really comment too terribly much on juvenile delinquency because we're not working with those kids. I don't know if Amy or Jerona has a thought about that.
My question might be out of your scope, but I just wanted an opinion. I'm good. Thank you. I just wanted to hear it. Thank you.
Okay, Senator Carozza.
Thank you. I'll be very brief. I want to thank the CASA organization for all you do, focusing on the best interests and protecting the child. My question for you, and I'd like to probably follow up with the appropriate CASA representative, is I noticed that you are required to have 30 hours of training, and I have been working on legislation requiring child custody evaluators involved with cases, allegations of child abuse and domestic violence, that they would have some minimum training requirements. And can you speak to your training, please?
Again, I'll take that real fast since I'm the oldest one of the group. The curriculum we use is from the National CASA Association. We are an affiliate of them. They don't give us money, but they do give us curriculum. And it's a very good curriculum. I know it's trademarked and we're not allowed to share it, but I think there must be some way that we could cooperate and collaborate with you or a committee to speak it, generally enough that we could help create what I think is a very good guide. So absolutely, I think we could work with you in some capacity.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, I just really quickly wanted to add also, just to let you know, that the training curriculum it covers reviewing what the risk factors are for child maltreatment. And then it also teaches our volunteers how to write effective court reports, how to conduct motivational interviews with all of the people that are involved in the child's life to really form that complete picture. So it's a very comprehensive training program.
Okay, thank you very much. My question, and we asked this on occasion, obviously with the budget being presented yesterday, and some good news, but also some questions about what future funding looks like years down the road. So you are formed as a nonprofit, because I'm sure you presented this. I just want to make sure I understand your business model. And if you are, can you talk to me about how you get funding? Is it through agency? Is it through the judiciary? Is it just private fundraising? Because I also saw the word volunteer. So your folks, there's a volunteer aspect. You don't need to spend a lot of time on that. I just thought I would like to understand better how you go about it financially for the purpose of perhaps us understanding for your benefit down the road.
Very briefly, the statute in Maryland allowed the administrative office of the courts to set aside some pot of money within the judiciary's budget to be based on a competitive cash match. So we are all, Amy and Jerona and I and anyone else in CASA programs, are actually competing with one another for the money that sits at the AOC. And that, I don't know for most programs, but the AOC usually funds about 20%, maybe 25% of organizational budgets. Some of us are fortunate enough to get some federal money through the VOCA, Victims of Crime Assistance Grant. I think most CASA programs get some of that, funding, and then we are on our own for the rest. We do fundraisers, and it can be as as simple as raffle tickets and as big as a big gala. So we are always working to raise funds. So magic wand in hand, if the AOC set aside enough money to fund CASA programs, totally, that would be great. I don't know that that's realistic, but it's a jigsaw puzzle.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that answer. And look, I appreciated your presentation. Today's sort of theme, if you will, had to do with DHS and understanding, how we go about helping people and these children. While I don't know names, I can just say that children in a mode where they're growing and becoming adults. You are an essential part of that. And my takeaway from this is that that work is so very important, and we appreciate you helping us understand it better. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Adams. And just one quick last comment. You mentioned something about volunteers. There is this requirement to have professional staff and a ratio for supervision. I have to say that I have observed CASA programs to be one of the more empowering volunteer tools in a community, because we are bringing community members in to work with children in their own community, which long-term leads to the health and well-being of the community. So it does cost money to run these programs, but it would cost a lot more if each of the volunteers were being paid. So they are the true heroes here. Thank you so much to all of you.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, members, we have Kristen Bryce and Ken Kozel. They're on the agenda for a few moments to break some news regarding Sure Health. And Ken and Kristen, good to see you. We've got a few minutes, and then we're going to talk about some federal updates and et cetera. So thank you for reaching out, and let's hear the news.
Thank you, Chairman Adams. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for giving us a few minutes of your time this morning on your agenda. I really find this as an effective way to communicate updates so that you've got the information you need to represent the Eastern Shore as best you can. So really, thank you for a few minutes. This past week has been a pretty amazing week for the Eastern Shore community, as well as the University of Maryland Medical System and University of Maryland Shore Regional Health. We accomplished two major milestones in our journey towards opening the new regional medical center in Easton. The first milestone was the governor's announcement this past Wednesday that in addition to the $10 million that the legislature secured in fiscal 24 for our project, he has allocated an additional $90 million towards the Easton Regional Medical Center in his CIP. His contributions will start in fiscal 25 of $20 million, $20 million in 26 as well, $20 million in 27, and then rounding out at $30 million in fiscal 28. So those numbers are included in his CIP, and we are just eternally grateful to Governor Wes Moore, to the Lieutenant Governor, and the entire administration in Annapolis for supporting the Eastern Shore's #1 priority. And I'll pause there for a second, because we could not have gotten this amazing announcement from the governor on Wednesday without each of your support. You're standing up and saying that it is the #1 priority for the Eastern Shore resonated incredibly well with the governor. The community support that you helped generate as a result of your recommendations were heard loud and clear in Annapolis and represented in the governor's decision. So I can't thank you enough, because that is one of the major milestones that we really needed to accomplish for this project to move forward. In addition to that great news on Wednesday, we also went in front of the Maryland Healthcare Commission yesterday afternoon, and where the commission heard our CON application request. I am pleased to report that in addition to the staff's unanimous approval of our application and their presentation to the commission, the Maryland Healthcare Commission voted unanimously to approve our CON application as written, along with our PCI application to relocate our PCI services to the new hospital when it's opened. That is another major hurdle in this process. We have never been this far with getting CON approval from the Maryland Healthcare Commission, and we received that unanimous approval yesterday afternoon. And I think it's important to note too, with that approval, it was for everything that we requested in our application. There was no reduction in beds, reduction in services, or reduction in operating rooms, or anything that we thought could happen, because we pushed the envelope on a lot of our requests for building the new hospital. So I'm very, very pleased to report that MHCC unanimously approved our request. And again, another major hurdle in our process. With that, the next step in this process, and really the last remaining major hurdle for us to move forward, is to work with the Health Services Cost Review Commission, the HSCRC, where, as you might recall, we have filed a full rate application for this new hospital. And what that will allow us to do is increase our rates so we can offset some of the new costs of interest and depreciation. It's just like getting a mortgage added to your monthly expenses. We're asking the HSCRC to help us pay for some of that additional cost. They are reviewing our application. It is very likely that we'll hear from them next week on next steps, and we're hopeful that their next steps will be to docket our application, which means that their questions have been satisfied, and now they're ready to pursue discussions on getting to a final recommendation. Their recommendation from the staff will also need to go in front of the HSCRC Commission, so we'll have that process to go through. The thing that I can't be sure to tell you today is how long that will take. I'm hopeful that it's less than a couple of months, but we will take this as far as we need to get as much in rate support as we can to help offset the cost so we can afford this new hospital. With that great news today and with what we've got coming forward, I just wanted to take a second to again say thank you from the bottom of our hearts here at UMS and Shore for your amazing support for what I believe is huge major milestones accomplished this week towards our project. This is the largest project that the Eastern Shore will experience for decades to come, certainly the Midshore. This is the generational benefit of improving the health and the economy that we all serve and live in. It's just phenomenal. And we could not be here without Senator Johnny Moutz, Senator Steve Hershey, and everyone in the Eastern Shore delegation supporting this cause as your number one priority. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to share that news with you. And I'm happy to take any questions, Chairman, if you've got the time.
So Ken, I'll open it up to questions by members if they have them. I'll just say yesterday when you called me on the phone, you and I have talked many times over my many years of service. It's been 10. And that was the most enthusiastic Ken Cozell I've heard on the phone in a long time. I was wondering what the call was for, and it didn't take me long to realize you got some good news. So to that end, I do applaud and thank the Moore administration for understanding and listening and recognizing during what we'll all agree is a difficult budget season and seasons to understand how critically important it is to have regional projects that advance health care and support to the citizens. These are messages that are more than just dollars. They are commitments of the variety that we can only hope comes from the very top. And you are administering that in a way that is very helpful to us. And I thank you for that. Senator Hershey.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And Ken, thank you again for the wonderful news. It came out to us in many different ways, and I appreciate you giving us the update. I had a chance to meet with Governor Moore yesterday, and after I wished him happy anniversary because it was his 1 year, and he was having breakfast with two Republican leaders, and I told him how much he's progressed over those 365 days. I did make sure to thank him for his dedication and commitment in the budget for the additional $90 million. But in doing so, I just really explained that, this is the culmination of such a long process in which each of the 5 counties, have made substantial changes to the way healthcare is delivered in those counties. And that this was, in fact, the last part of that hub and spoke approach that we took to delivering healthcare services in the Midshore. And he looked at me and even said, that's why I did this. And he said, you guys have all made the commitment. You've done what you're supposed to do. And he says, I truly believe that that this will benefit certainly many, many citizens on the Eastern Shore. And he is as well thanked the entire delegation for our support and what we've done. So again, yeah, two great milestones that have been accomplished this week. Ken, thank you and Kristen and support for that. But again, thank you for each member of the delegation that has recognized how important this is and has continued to advocate for this new hospital and the process in which we can deliver healthcare services on the Midshore.
Senator Carozza.
Thank you. And of course, we always like great news on Friday afternoons, and that is a huge win for our Eastern Shore delegation. And I just wanted to also highlight another Eastern Shore delegation priority is our Tidal Health Trauma Center funding that we all have been working together because we still have some challenges there.
Absolutely. Delegate Hutchinson.
Thank you, Chair. Ken, great to see you. And that was certainly great news when we talked yesterday. Just give me a reminder. You said nothing changed. So beds, number of ORs, maternity ORs, ED, and are we still looking at 550 million, or has that increased because of the delays?
We are, you're absolutely right. Tom, there is, all of the beds that we requested have been approved. And
so that's 147, right?
147 total. That's correct. 122 inpatient beds and 25 observation beds. 147 total. And the cost of the project is just shy of $540 million.
ORs and ED?
ORs 7 were approved, and emergency department 27 treatment rooms with 3 additional behavioral health treatment rooms that are designated for our behavioral health patients.
And did the 7 ORs include the maternity?
No, sir. 2 more above that include C-section rooms beyond the 7 in the OR. So we have 2 now designated C-section rooms for our delivering moms.
Great news. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your support.
Senator Mounts.
Thanks, Chairman. I really don't have a question. I just want to congratulate Ken and Kristen, and thank you for all your support and following this process. It's a huge step in the direction of finalizing this wonderful project. And as a minority leader, Senate minority leader talked about the regional approach, I just wanted to thank the entire delegation for their steadfast support in this project, because it's a huge commitment. It's a huge sacrifice, and it's all about the entire Eastern Shore. So thank you all so much for sticking with this. It's a big step. And I was joking with texting with somebody. I said, I'd volunteer to be the first patient, but we got a long ways to go before that happens. So I got a couple aches and bruises. They'll probably still be around, but congratulations. And thank you for sharing the great news.
Johnny, you should just show up for the ribbon cutting. That's not be a patient. Larry, we don't normally let non-members ask questions, but I see your hand, and I know this is important to you. I've got a couple seconds here. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just a lowly commissioner, but Ken, thank you. Thank you for this news. I think it was 14 years ago we started this, and it's great. So congratulations, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Larry. Appreciate your support, my friend.
All right, Ken, it sounds like you have a lot of people behind you in the Peloton formation as you bring this home for us. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge Dr. Mohan Santha as well. With the governor's contribution, his direct involvement was critical to our success. And of course, Kristen Jones-Bryce. I mean, who better than Kristen to represent UMS and Shore and the Eastern Shore with each of you and with our governor. So can't thank you all enough. I will keep you posted, I promise. And I thank you for the opportunity to use this forum to keep you informed.
Okay, we all agree about Kristen. She's great. Thank you. All right. Members, I'm going to do the federal updates real quick. We've already heard from Melissa. We've got Kim Cradaville. Anything from Senator Cardin's office?
No, I think the senator handled the federal update fantastically, but I did just want to remind folks about the local government webinar that Senator Van Hollen and Senator Cardin are doing on Thursday, January 25th at 11. So I sent out the link to Betsy last week. If you have any questions, please reach out. And then for nonprofits, if there's still any on, it will be Friday, the 26th from 11 to 12. So thank you.
Okay. And I don't see with my computer screen anybody with Andy Harris's office, but if Andy Harris has an update, his office, now's the time.
Mike is here.
Okay. Not hearing from the congressman's office. Okay. So Delegate Hartman, can we reset at least briefly the conversation about the hospice letter, and either we can continue the conversation for next week, but I know we're sort of running out of time, but I wanted to capture that because that was part of the agenda, was the possibility of sending a letter. So I just wanted to maybe reset your concern, maybe have a brief conversation, and then maybe decide to put it off for next week for a little bit more talk needed.
Right. Excuse me. I think the best thing is if we could defer this for a week. Hopefully everybody understands the concern. I'm waiting to hear back from the folks at Coastal Hospice here. The brick and mortar facilities are what's being affected by this. And if you could share the letter from hospice, I think there's still some confusion amongst the members as to what their ask actually is. The understanding that I have is that they want to start taking Medicaid to pay their room and board. Right now, hospice does fundraising, at least the Stansel House here does fundraising to offset the cost for somebody that can't afford their care. The brick and mortar hospice facilities are, experiencing challenges in meeting the cost. They're running at a huge deficit. And, I understand the need where they need some type of funding so that they can maintain existence. But also my concern is that we maintain somehow room for the self-pay. A lot of people contributed, thousands of dollars to build a facility here in northern Worcester County. And I just want some kind of assurance that there's going to be balance between the number of Medicaid patients, if this were to go through, and room for those who are self-paying members of the community that contributed, to build a facility. So, we need money to keep it in existence, but we also need it to be available, for the community. And I'm trying to get those answers. I reached out to some board members. I spoke with Monica directly. So a week would be much appreciated.
Well, that's absolutely possible. Plus, if you remember, we had to leave. The House Delegate members had to go to floor, so we did not end up hearing the full presentation. The senators did. So what we'll do is we'll park the letter writing for a week, and Delegate Hartman, I'll put you on the calendar, and we'll start with whenever that hits the agenda. We'll start with you if you want to give us any updates, and perhaps if warranted, bring hospice in for a brief conversation. Hopefully we can do this offline, because it really just does come down to if and how, and I'm sure it's a how we approach supporting the hospice in this setting. So I'm fine with that.
Hospice is near and dear. I don't want anybody to think that I'm not supporting. I'm just trying to make sure that, we can accomplish both, meeting their financial needs, but also having the facility there for the community, and that we're not doing something that's going to change things. Every action has a reaction. I just want to make sure we get it right.
Okay, and I agree. I do see Mike Detmer with Congressman Harris's office. Go right ahead, Mike.
Yes, Delegate, sorry, was slow on the unmute button earlier. Only update from the Congressman's office, to my knowledge, is that the Congressman will be hosting the wind hearing at the Ocean City Convention Center tomorrow from 2 to 4. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. All right, so for the good of the order, any questions? Senator Mouch, you were the first hand up.
Chairman, could you announce we're having our district night?
Senator, why don't you announce, because I don't have it in front of me, the dates or anything.
Yes, neither do I.
How about if I pass to Kevin Hornberger and we'll get our stuff together here. Delegate Hornberger.
Yeah, just very briefly, Senator Hershey and I had the pleasure of meeting with some of our mental health professionals yesterday down there in the Senate office building. And one of the takeaways was an Eastern Shore guided letter to the health secretary about expediting our CCBHC status with the federal government. We will endeavor to have that letter drafted between now and the next meeting for approval, but just wanted to give you a heads up. And if anyone else would like to give input, it's something we're very passionate about. Thank you.
Okay, absolutely. Delegate Hutchinson.
So we will be holding our district night, District 37, on Monday, January 29th from 5 to 7 at the Federal House in downtown Annapolis. And we would hope that everybody will come and join Senator Mounts and Delegate Adams, Delegate Sample Hughes, and myself for some great food, and then come up to the State House afterwards when and join either the Senate or the House when we go into session at 8 p.m. on that Monday night.
Thank you, Tom. Tom had it together, Johnny. Okay, so before we adjourn, there is an upcoming 50th anniversary of the Delmarva Water Transport Committee. So it's Friday, February 2nd. Members may want to chime in on this, but there's been a request to do a Eastern Shore delegation citation for that. And what I'll do is I'll leave it to the members to chime in whether they're fine with that or any questions. But we don't normally do delegation citations that cover Cecil down to Somerset, but this is a regional interest, and the 50th anniversary, I think it is fitting for us to speak as a voice for that particular anniversary. So if there's any conversation about that, otherwise I'll get that drafted. Okay, if there's nothing else for the good of the order, I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
In a second.
Second.
Okay, everyone have a good Friday. Thank you very much.